Welcome to Mindfulness at L'Oreal, an IOM case study. We are waiting for people to kind of roll in as we do at the beginning of all these sessions, but go ahead and let us know where you're calling in from today. We'd love to learn a little bit about you, since mostly it's just going to be us up here talking, but we'd love to learn a bit about you as much as we can. And we really appreciate your interest in learning more about mindfulness overall, and especially the program built at L'Oreal. And we have our guest here, Jade, who's going to talk with Andy about that. And of course, Andy Lee, our great MC of this series. I like you guys have your own kind of emotes.
I turn my self view off, and that makes it easier to do silly things.
That's good. I like that. That's very mindful of you. Like no self view. I like that.
Well, you never really think about it, but how often are you in an actual meeting where you see an image of yourself on the other side of the table next to everybody else? It's a little weird.
It is a little weird, yeah, and we probably look at ourselves more than we actually do the other people.
Right.
I try to look at my camera, but even that's still awkward because I'm looking at a camera, right?
Right.
It's the Zoom era. Anyway, I think we've got kind of our mass of our starting group here. Wow, we've got almost 60 people told us where they're calling from. Awesome, thank you. I'll read those in a second. So my name is Cole Harbor. I'm the executive officer at the Institute for Organizational Mindfulness, and we're the sponsoring organization of this series, which is basically designed to profile a series of companies that are building organizational mindfulness programs in the way that they do, which if you've been in this series with us, you'll already know that there's a big diversity of approaches there. And this is really for you as an individual, or maybe you're thinking about it for your company, to think about how to get started for yourself and your team and your wider organization. So hopefully today L'Oreal will provide you some more pro tips and tricks and a roadmap for that. And we'll definitely be giving you more information on how to plug in with Andy and Jade and IOM afterwards. But I did want to introduce Andy in case any of you haven't been at the series yet. Andy Lee is, as you know, the former Chief Mindfulness Officer at Aetna Insurance. He was really a pioneer at building that program there. And today is a teacher with an organization called the Potential Project, while he also runs his own firm called Mindful Ethos. Just a groundswell of wisdom and knowledge on mindfulness and business. So we're very lucky to have him guide these conversations. So I will hand it off to Andy here. Just FYI though, about kind of tech stuff, what we use, just kind of where to place what. So if you have any questions about what Jade and Andy are talking about, or just stuff you want to hear about, put it in the Q&A. Just hit the Q&A button, and that'll go up in a queue. And if I can, I'll try to answer in text. And if we can't get to it and there's like a common theme coming up throughout the time, we'll save that for near the end and have them address that directly so they can just move smoothly through their conversation. And then any reactions, emotes, anything like that, use the chat. That'd be a great place to go. So I will hand it off to Andy. Thanks so much again for being here, Jade. Looking forward to hearing what you got to say.
Thanks, Cole.
Thanks, Cole.
Silently back away.
Okay. Well, hello, Jade. How are you doing today?
Good, Andy. I think I'm also seeing in the chat, like everyone else, running from meeting to meeting,
Yes.
coming,
yes.
trying to land here.
Yeah.
Happy to be here with you.
Great. It's great to be here with you, and welcome everybody else who's joining from all over the US and different parts of the world. It's really exciting every time that we see the breadth of interest in this topic in mindfulness that Jade and I really have a lot of a personal interest and investment in. And my guest today, of course, is Jade Sonkin. I've known Jade for a couple of years now. We've collaborated, shared ideas and best practices through a group that we're both part of, and I know that she's got a lot of wisdom to share. So Jade is the assistant vice president for people development now at L'Oreal. She actually started in marketing at L'Oreal and transitioned over to this role, which has connected actually to the story. And she's going to tell us about how she got started, how she got a program started, um, what you did to develop it, the decisions you made along the way, and what worked and what didn't for you. And I know our audience is really interested in hearing all about that.
Yeah, I am an open book. If I can help you deter from the mistakes that I've made, I want, that's my intention here.
That's great. So before we get started, though, I'd like to invite you to lead us in a brief mindfulness practice. Would that be okay?
I would love to. I think this will
Okay.
help me too.
Yeah.
So how many of us physically are here, but then our mind is somewhere else? It's still connected to something else. We're going to kind of call that attention back. So if you're sitting, take a tall seat, place both feet on the floor. Your hands can settle on your lap. And if it's safe, allow your eyes to gently close or softly gaze down and forward. With nothing else to do, nowhere else to be except right here, right now, start to notice, how are you feeling? Where's your attention? Where's your energy? No right or wrong answer. I'm just noticing, being a little amused if your attention is somewhere else. Now bring to mind, imagine in the middle of your head, right behind your eyes and in between your ears, there's a magnet. And this magnet is going to call back all of your attention and energy. So as you inhale, sitting up nice and tall, your energy is being called back, your attention is being called back from all people, places, time, and events. Continue to breathe, calling back your attention and energy, bringing it back to your body, meeting your body in this present moment. Keep breathing, gently calling back your time, your attention, your energy. And start to notice how this might feel. And if you start to feel some energy in your body that maybe feels a little tight or stuck, it's okay. We're all human. It's natural. But now that we've called back our time and attention and our energy, start to notice where in your body you might be feeling tight or tense. And as you inhale, start to squeeze your shoulders up to your ears and squeeze everything in your body. We're going to start to wring out all of those places that feel stuck. Take another sip of air in, keep squeezing, and exhale out the mouth. And release. Let that go. We're going to do this 2 more times. And as you inhale next, imagine all of those stuck places, all of that heaviness that you might be feeling. Move that energy to your throat. So as we exhale, we let it go with the audible sigh. Inhale through the nose, squeeze everything, your hands, your eyes, your glutes, your toes, wring it out, bring that to your throat. Take another sip of air in and exhale, relax, let everything go. And if we didn't catch everything this last time, we're going to do it one more time. Inhale through the nose, squeeze everything, wring it out, bring that energy up to your throat. Take another sip of air in. And exhale. Relax the shoulders. It may feel good to roll your shoulders or roll your neck. Bring yourself back into your body. Wiggle your toes and your fingers. And just notice how you're feeling now. Aligning your attention and energy with your body here in this present moment. Arriving so that we may get the most out of our time here together. Allow your eyes to flutter open and come back.
Thank you for that, Jade. I have to say, I've never done that before. And in a way, that's really appropriate because your whole approach, the approach you brought to L'Oreal, is really a blend, right? It's a blend of mindfulness and yoga and some other experiences and modalities that you're familiar with, right?
Yeah. It draws upon a lot of the science behind those different approaches, because I found that when you're speaking to people who may not be familiar with mindfulness or know how to practice mindfulness, we need to meet them where they are. And maybe the way that we approach some of those things, there is a certain connotation attached to meditating, this idea that maybe you have to be a monk up on this mountaintop that's quiet for hours at a time, or to practice yoga, you have to be this flexible, fit person. And we don't want those assumptions to get in the way from people to experience what mindfulness does have to offer.
Right. So that was a very science-based approach. The inhale, the tightening of the muscles, the exhale. I know I've read a lot about that and practiced that myself. The deep exhale is a really important part of that process as well, of that practice, right?
Yeah, and just letting it go. I find that, if you can package all those things into a few short minutes, it really helps, especially people who are fast-paced here in New York.
Yeah.
And in really squeezing your body and letting it go, you're feeling a difference. Sometimes mindfulness, is too much in our minds and it's hard to see or feel a difference. And in squeezing all of that and visualizing, which is really helpful, allows us to feel some sense of relief instantaneously almost.
Yeah, it's physiological. Yeah. Thank you for that. And so what I'd like to do to start our conversation about what you're doing with L'Oreal, which of course we've actually already started, is to take you back a little bit and have you tell us a little bit about how you came to mindfulness and then how you decided that that you wanted to bring it into the workplace, into where you worked. What was that journey like?
Yeah, I am from LA, so I live in New York now. And I started my career at a media agency out in LA, and it was awesome. It was fun. It was fast paced. And like any other client service, if you're familiar, it was also very demanding. So I was in it. I was going really fast, loving it. And then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, okay, this is not quite so sustainable. And I found myself experiencing burnout, anxiety, because I didn't really have the coping tools or the self-recovery or even the language to know that that's what I needed. So I did some research, thank goodness for the Ministry of Google, to learn more about what I could do, and found mindfulness. Also was put in touch with someone who helped me learn a little more about meditation, and started my own self-practice, which I think is the most important thing with mindfulness. It's not a magic wand. It's not a pill that you can take that will make stress and anxiety go away. and this is a core tenet to the program at L'Oreal, is that it's a practice. It is something that you have to incorporate into your day-to-day life. So as I was doing that in parallel to my career, I started learning more, incorporating it into what I was doing. Moved to New York, kind of quit my job in that industry. Once I came to this realization that, does it have to be like this? Can I find something? And we kind of laughed about this before, like, who moves to New York to find peace
balance?
and balance?
That's a first, but it worked for you, so we're going to go with it, Jade.
Right. But that's also the thing. It's not the job or the place or the person, anything that's outside of yourself, that you're going to find these things. So that's what I love about mindfulness and the practice, is that you bring that wherever you go.
Yeah.
So I started working at L'Oreal, found my own practice. And at this point, I had so many great tools that were helping me to cope and self-recover that I started at L'Oreal and I saw my colleagues feeling the same burnout that I had experienced. So for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I have these great tools. How can I share? And, that's kind of where the desire or intention was to build a program, and also having my CMO at the time really support meditation herself. So she had a mindfulness practice and noticed that L'Oreal could benefit from a practice like that, and really supported me in figuring out how we could bring that to life at L'Oreal.
So it's an interesting point if you think about it, because you didn't start bringing mindfulness to L'Oreal because you got the sense that this was in the air or was accepted or it was part of the culture. It was really the opposite, to say, wow, this organization is kind of on the other end of the spectrum and they could really use this. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And this is something too, now fast forward, it's been 3 years now. And if I couldn't wave my magic wand and help myself back then, I would say, just keep practicing, because the more that you embody the content, be the content, if you will, then people start to notice and lean in more organically. You find people to be like, oh my gosh, that's, Jade, you're going through a really stressful time, but you still have a smile on your face. What's going on? And then sharing, it's this practice that I have. If you'd like to learn more, I'm happy to talk about it. And then, I see in the chat too, executive buy-in is important and helpful. And then trying to organize something bigger than just me being like, hey, I got something to share.
Right. So the first thing you did, your pilot, so to speak, was with the chief marketing officer. So, you said that you felt that you knew that she had some sense of what mindfulness was about and some of the benefits. But what were you thinking, given that this is going to be a very high-profile client, even though they're supportive? They definitely want this to go right. What decisions did you make to decide how to kind of take that first step?
Yeah, all of those things were going through my mind when they kind of looked and said, oh, Jade, you've been really vocal about your personal practice. What do you think about creating a program? And, in my back of my mind, I was like, I don't know how to do that. But I found myself being like, yes, let's do that. We will figure it out. And I kind of went back to what I knew in the agency life and said, okay, I don't have these resources readily available to me. I'm going to reach out to the experts. Let's be resourceful. So I sent out an RFP, or a request for proposal, to 11 different companies that I found online that were offering mindfulness within corporations, and then also just within other organizations. And it was more to, one, help me understand what was out there so that I could start to build the framework of what our program would be, and to also validate what I had in mind, because I was thinking I would like to build something where we're getting in-person instruction,
Right.
so that people are really connecting to it, and also have something digital, a library of some sort, to give people some flexibility, and someone who has some corporate understanding, someone who can meet us where we are. And that's kind of where it started, sending that out, and then gathering up all of the information around their offers, kind of doing a side-by-side Excel doc with, here are the different vendors, here's their offer, here's how much it costs, here are strengths, here are weaknesses, here are our thoughts, and how they might fit into the corporate culture, and kind of doing an analysis of that, and then bringing that back to my CMO and saying, okay, I did this research, this is what I'm thinking, what are your thoughts? Because another next crucial step was to get funding for a small pilot to get that launched.
I was going to ask that, because if you're doing an RFP, that suggests that you either have money or you're pretty confident that you can get money if you get, some good proposals in. And was that a challenge, or how did that work out?
It kind of was a chicken or the egg thing, right? Because for the request from my CMO to say, let's build a program, I had to say, okay, great, I would love to build a program. And if I had all of the resources and tools to do it, I would. So it was a humble moment to say, like, I don't have all of that. So we may need to go outside of the organization to really lean on that expertise. And that may cost something. So if you are okay with that, I will gather up all the information, get a ballpark of what it does cost, and then we can kind of discuss. And that, in the RFP, we were explicit to say, this is a pilot. It's going to be, a quick 4 weeks just to test out what might work well. To also, to your point, be upfront and transparent to these partners, because I didn't want to be like, cool, we're going to have all of this money to engage you, and it not be the case.
Got it. So the program, the vendor that you went with, which you can tell us about in a minute, offered, as I said, a little bit of a blended program, I'd say. And I think it'd be really interesting to hear from you about just the nature of that program and why you thought that approach would work for L'Oreal.
Yeah, so we ended up partnering with a company called MindFresh that's based here in New York, founded by Jen Klukowski. And when we spoke with her, she actually had a background in corporate. So she was working in sales, and kind of went through the story of, found herself in burnout and experiencing, back pain and things like that. So she understood kind of our starting point. And that was a key point and differentiator from the other vendors who may have come from a more traditional yoga background, or were meditation teachers, but have only been in that space. So we connected in that way. And the way that she built MindFresh was with that in mind. So she, after being in corporate, went and became studied yoga. So she had that background. And we worked really hard to neutralize the language, to make it approachable for anyone who maybe wasn't into yoga, wasn't into meditation, wasn't into those things. But going back to, we knew that all of these things were based in science. So we really focused on that first, to try and draw people in and let them experience it. Because we found that once people actually experienced the how they felt, and what it felt like after just breathing consciously for a few minutes, they kind of were we're in, or at least a little bit more open to practice. So the
Right.
structure of the program, it was kind of 3 parts. We would start with a mindset. So talking about things like what's going on in the workplace. We understand that things are moving really fast and you don't have enough time even to take a break for lunch. And yet you still want to practice mindfulness. So what are some strategic mindset shifts that we can offer? One of them being, adding the word yet to the end of, I don't know how to meditate. I don't have time yet, right? A quick and easy way to come back around to say, like, you're not failing at this. Keep going, keep practicing. So we would talk about mindset up front, and that would change every session. And that would go into a breathing and mindful movement exercise. So we were very mindful of using the words mindful movement,
Right.
because we didn't want people to feel like that was a barrier to showing up. So a mindful movement is small, easy stretches you could do at your desk in a skirt or heels, so that you didn't feel like, oh, this is a yoga session, I'm going to be sweating and it's the middle of the day, I can't shower. So after mindset and breathing and stretching and explaining why we're breathing. So this 4-count breath, inhale and exhale, is actually creating equanimity in your mind so that you can reverse engineer some of this calm. Really helped with that. And also explaining movement in such a sedentary lifestyle that a lot of us experience is important to get blood and oxygen flowing throughout your body, because when we sit all day, our blood kind of sits stagnant right around our legs. And this oftentimes causes that afternoon slump, that brain fog that we're feeling. So if you just get up and pretend like you're sitting in a chair while standing to kind of do some squats almost, then you're starting to re-engage that flow of oxygen and blood, which will naturally energize you for the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah.
And then the third part was a light meditation to make it approachable. Something, just a visualization that would be really nice to help them kind of calm their mind, engage their 5 senses to bring them back into the present. Things that are approachable and easy to remember. So there was a really low barrier to join.
So let me focus on the content for a bit, because people who are more familiar with the traditional approach to mindfulness, right? It rarely involves movement, right? And usually we observe the breath. So it's almost the opposite of movement. It's coming into stillness, which of course has a lot of benefit. But what you're saying is basically we can consider broader options. That movement can be a good adjunct to the other practices. And specifically about movement, did you find that was really helpful for people? Did people resist it at all, or what was the response to it?
Yeah, we had people across the spectrum. I feel like we can't make everyone happy, unfortunately, which is why we also say this is an offer, make it your own. Create a practice that you're going to feel good about and then continue to do, because that's the most important point, is practice and keep doing it, keep going at it. Most of the feedback was positive in moving, and mostly because everyone was sitting all day. It becomes so easy, especially now where a lot of us may be working from home, and I experienced this too, where you log in the morning and then you blink and then all of a sudden it's like 3 o'clock and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't moved. And you don't realize it, but then actually moving your body in whatever way, then you start to actually feel a little bit more relief, because you're changing your body posture, but then you're also changing the way that you're moving. You're
Mm-hmm.
and I believe, you know, when your body moves, your brain starts grooving a little easier, flowing a little better.
Yeah, definitely. So early on, you mentioned the fact that it was really important for people to see this as a practice. How did you build that into the design of the program so that to encourage people to stay with it?
So we named the program Guided Mindfulness Practice to start.
Just a hint, right?
All things, but coming from marketing, important. And every time we talked in our sessions, this was part of the mindset of, this is a practice. You may not have it right now. And also just notice, maybe you don't feel
Mm-hmm.
good today, and that's
Yeah.
okay. You'll practice again tomorrow, and it may feel totally different. And I believe too, and this is something as I teach, say, you know, if you have a daily practice, whether it's in the morning where you just check in with yourself, we describe mindfulness as bringing more attention to the present moment. Simply put, if your attention's over here, you're bringing it back to right now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it kind of turns into almost that mental practice, right? Another way that we say it is, we build physical strength by exercising our bodies. And we also build our mental strength by training our attention. So when our attention like flows over here, we notice and we gently bring it back. That's one
Right.
mental bicep curl. And then
Right.
we also liken it to say, just in the same way that you go to the gym once, you're not going to get abs. This has to be a constant practice for you so that you can get to a place where your attention sits in the present for longer. And then you won't be wandering as much. I mean, we're all human, right? Our minds are meant to think and wander, and that's okay. But start to notice, to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of use that framework to
Mm-hmm.
liken it to that physical exercise so that it was a little easier to comprehend or get, or like
Right.
click that, okay, this is something, not a one and done
Right.
pill or medicine that I can take.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, even once you get it, you don't say, "Oh, I've finally mastered that routine at the gym, so now I'm going to stop going."
Right.
It's something that you have to keep doing. It
Yeah,
gets a little bit easier, you know, it gets a little bit more accessible as we get into the groove. But it's really important to encourage people, to make that clear to people. And, you know, the word you used, yet, you know, is so important. That's one of Carol Dweck's key words when she
exactly.
talks about
Yep.
growth mindset, right? To
Mm-hmm.
say, I may not be there yet, but there's no reason that I can't get there. And that's a great approach to take. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about the first kind of the first program that you did and the first time that you got feedback. Okay, so I know that you put a lot of thought into how to evaluate this, because you know you're going to have to market this, you know you're going to have to make the business case. What did you do to figure out whether this was working, and what were the results?
Great question. So as I mentioned, we started with a pilot with the CMO team. So it was a
Mm-hmm.
smaller group, and it was 4 weeks. And after each week, we had one 30-minute session. I would go around and kind of ask the team, how did you feel? And some of the feedback that we got in the first couple weeks was, oh, I don't know, it feels still like maybe too much yoga, or this teacher said the word sun salutation. I don't know what that means. And so we worked really closely with Jen and the teachers who came in to say, okay, let's take a step back. Because I also noticed this in myself of, I know this is going to help you, so just get with it. Like, it's going to work, and kind of lower my ego to say, okay, yes, we think of it as a sun salutation, but what if we just used breathe and raise your arms up high and lower them down, right? Put our ego aside to say it has to be said like this, to meet them where they are. So a
Mm-hmm.
big part of the feedback was the language that we were using and kind of lowering that cost of entry, or, making it more accessible and approachable.
Mm-hmm.
We also got some feedback around the time of day that some people enjoyed it. Some people wanted to do it right in the morning. Some people wanted to do it, later in the day, in the afternoon. And then we also got some feedback from our CEO saying, okay, you need to do it outside of office hours, because we want to respect the business, which I totally understand. So we figured early in the morning, people may not be ready because they have their routines, they get their coffee, they're getting ready, and they just want to be in their own zone.
Mm-hmm.
Later in the day, after work, may not be a great time because people are rushing to get home or log off and do their own thing. So we landed on lunchtime. So 12:30 to 1 was kind of where we felt is a nice medium. As I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to meet everybody's needs.
Right. So this first pilot, did you focus on qualitative feedback because it was a small group and just really get the sense? Did you do a survey as well, or is that something that you didn't do to start off with?
Yeah, we did both. Always,
Okay.
always. This is one of my big recommendations. Have a survey. Even if it's only a few questions, it's really good to get that qualitative or quantitative feedback rather, so that
Mm-hmm.
you can market your program later. So yeah, we brainstormed on, okay, what are some of the KPIs or key performance indicators of the business? And what would our leadership and our business teams care about? Because that's who we would need support from, right? Because we have people who are interested in practicing, but then your boss doesn't give you the time or allow you to take the time to do it. So we identified stress relief and stress management
Yeah.
was a big one for participants and also managers. Finding clarity and focus in what you're doing, whether that's work or even at home. And productivity was a big one too, from a business standpoint. So we
Mm-hmm.
asked those questions, asked our participants to rate them. And then from that point on, we kind of used the same metrics to have I think we were doing biannual surveys so that we can have some comparisons.
Got it. Got it. So you've got a marketing background, and I know you also have a passion for marketing. It's something that is really kind of part of who you are. You like to get the word out on things. Um, did you start marketing this right away, or how did you approach growing interest or growing participation in this program?
Yeah. Even though my CMO approached me about the program, I still had to figure out a way to market it back to her, right? Because we needed the funding. So I had to think about, okay, what are the key metrics that are going to be important? What's going to, in their mind, have an impact? Why mindfulness? Because at this
Mm-hmm.
point, most people, and I felt this way too before I started practicing. It's like, okay, all of that self-care stuff is separate, and then all the work stuff is over here, and then you kind of jump between the two. Like you go to work and then you go home to recharge, and then you go back to work. So yeah, we had to come up with a way to sell it in to get funding. So that took some marketing. I mean, to your point, I do love marketing and I love PowerPoint. So I put together some slides, made them nice and pretty, and called out some of those metrics for the KPI. So, 98% of people found improved stress relief and stress management after just one session, one 30-minute session. Because I also know from my background in corporate that people
Mm-hmm.
don't have time. I don't even have
Yeah.
time to sit down and do
Yeah.
anything. So I really want some immediate results. Like, how are
Yeah.
you going to make me feel better now. Yeah, so
I thought that was a
so
really innovative assessment, thought to say, what benefit did you see after just one session? Because like you said, that really speaks to people.
mhm,
And as we know, I mean, sometimes people are so stressed out or kind of lost that they don't really, it doesn't even land with them the first time.
yeah.
But so many times it does. So many times it can just be a 3 or 5 minute practice. And what you outlined, people can just, it can really kind of shake people up and say, wow, I really needed that, even just after one session.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And of the people who did join us, we kind of we took an approach of, okay, who are the people that we would not normally say, oh yeah, of course, well, you already practice yoga, you already practice mindfulness. And we
Hmm.
had a VP of purchasing who had been with the company for 30 years, and he never in his life had meditated, never practiced mindfulness, didn't do yoga, any of that. Yet we started to notice that he came to every session. And I went up and asked him, I was like, why? I'm just curious. What do you like about it? What are you getting from this? And he said, you know what, Jade, I've never done this before, but in showing up for these 30 minutes, I find that I do feel a lot more stress relief
Hmm.
and I'm feeling better in my body. And something interesting, my team has said that I have become a lot more empathetic and in tune with what they need.
Wow.
And so, one, I was just like, wow, okay, this is why I'm doing this, to help people like this. And then my marketer hat went off and I said, can I quote you on that? And put that also in our marketing to say, look, this isn't just for people who may have experience with this before. This is
Right,
someone who'd never experienced this
right,
and is now loving it so much
right.
that he is coming every session.
That's so nice because what I'm getting from this, Jade, is the fact that you really were present in these sessions. You were listening to people, you were observing people, and you were really kind of adjusting on the fly in terms of the language and other things. And a lot of times, um, you know, for instance, I'm very rooted in a traditional mindfulness approach. And, I've learned over time what draws people in and what creates barriers. But it's like you said, it's so important to let a lot of that go and just open up and notice what's working for people and make it a process of opening doors instead of creating hurdles.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So, and to that point too, like how do you call in people versus call them out, right?
Mm,
It's not a you're not practicing it this way when really
hmm.
we're just calling people in to say, let us help you in whatever way. Feel
Right,
better, feel
right,
some sense of relief. On,
yeah,
find something that's going to help you in coping and self recovery, because unfortunately, those are things that we don't learn in school or
yeah.
life. Usually, we have to stumble upon it, or we have to hit that wall before we go searching for something like that.
Yep. So you had this first program. It's successful. You had some good quotes. You sold your CMO. Where do you go from here? How do you scale up? Um, what are the next steps that you pursue to broaden the audience for this?
Yep. So I we joked about this, but my slides and my dossier, I like kind of went around and did a road show throughout the organization, started to notice some of the executive leadership who were open to it and
Hmm.
kind of said, hey, is this something that you're interested in? Would you like your team to also do a pilot? Because in this part, I really recommend radical generosity, right? It becomes really easy to hold it and be like, we're doing this because we need to, get funding, or we're doing this because I want people to feel a certain way. And really, if you think about the intention of it, for me, I just wanted to help spread the relief that I had felt from these tools. So with that intention, it was much easier to be generous of like, hey, are you having a meeting? Can I join for the first 5 minutes? I'll take you through a mindfulness moment and we'll see how that feels. And I was doing that across a bunch of different teams just to get the word out so that mindfulness became something that was not this far off woo-woo thing, but really reminding people that no, mindfulness really just is bringing more attention to the present moment. So again, lowering that cost of entry and getting to a point where I was speaking to our chief HR officer of, hey, these are really great benefits that we're finding across the organization. How can we scale this program? And so then we ended up moving the program into HR rewards or HR benefits. So then we had ongoing funding for that and started to offer it across all of our brands and employees for our employees in our Hudson Yards office in New York.
Yeah, and I wanted to call that out because you're talking about basically marketing it across Hudson Yards, which is a pretty big office for L'Oreal, right? Is it the largest office in the U.S. or?
It is. So we have about, well, in the U.S. we have about 12,000 employees. At Hudson Yards we have almost 2,000 of that, and then we have our manufacturing plants and things like that across the U.S. So it is a larger part, and it's also, you know, headquarters. So we have the ear of our executives, and to the benefit of this program, L'Oreal is incredible with supporting what we call intrapreneurship. So how in helping or supporting their employees when you have an idea, and if you put in the work to build that case study, they experiment and try it out. So that is something that I believe was really helpful in getting this kind of launched for the program. And also, you know, some of those stats of, you know, we hit 20% of the Hudson Yards office who like attended a program. I know we joke about it, but that's, you know, getting the awareness about it is really the first step, because then you're not the only megaphone saying this is important. You have other people within the organization to say, hey, no, I need this. Why can't we have more of these things? So that there's other touch points to support this initiative.
Got it. Hey, Cole.
Hey, I'm back. That was a really interesting conversation. The thing I've noticed is how much your marketing expertise has made this program so great. I mean, the language, really the language. I mean, that's so important to, like, you know, the first step in this whole journey is like, you kind of have to like work with people's, you know, myth of what mindfulness is in their head, right? So if you can have all that kind of those set of words that can kind of flip those triggers down to call in people,
right?
I mean, that's such a great, it's just so clear in the way you naturally speak. So that's
And there's one other thing that I wanted to mention also, Cole, that I wanted to make sure that Jade mentions is the fact that you started that podcast with other internal folks in terms of marketing. The fact that you know, again, you reached out to senior leaders, you made it relatable. Can you just say like a couple of words about that as we unfortunately are nearing the end of our time or getting close to the end?
Yeah. So we, with mindfulness, we took that momentum and we founded internally a wellness squad, which sits under people innovation at L'Oreal. And we were thinking of ways like, how do we start to now normalize wellness? We got mindfulness in a place of understanding, but, you know, pre-COVID, we were in person and we were really trying to explain why mindfulness, advocating of like, why is mindfulness important? Then COVID hit and everyone kind of were like, oh, okay, we understand why. And now we're moving into this how do I practice mindfulness? We do it virtually, but what are other tools that we can do and share with not just ourselves and our teams, but our families? So with the Wellness Innovation Squad, we wanted to normalize that across our team. So we created the Live Well L'Oreal podcast, which is internal right now. And it was just interviewing employees on their journey to wellness. So, how do you define wellness? Because it's different for everyone. And then, how do you live it? And really showing that vulnerability of leadership, showing a different side of them, especially during COVID times, what they're going through, and that it also letting people know that you're not alone, and it's okay to talk about these things at work. It's actually really important that we talk about these things at work, because our minds don't know the delineation of work Jade versus home Jade.
Right.
It's all just one. So, and now, you know, when a lot of companies are saying, and L'Oreal included, bring your whole self to work, I believe we should, then we need to show a little bit more of that vulnerability and walk that talk.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know Cole is here because I think we have a lot of good questions and some other things that you wanted to throw into the mix, right, Cole?
Yeah, just one comment from an attendee saying, I was talking about the language and your marketing expertise. It says it's not just Jade's languaging, but her listening. So it's clear that, I mean, you say it because you have heard it, right? So I thought that was a great comment. Yeah, I think you kind of alluded to how COVID has, like, from a marketing perspective, kind of changed the entrance into this topic, right? People know it's important. But I know also it's kind of affected the way that you've actually delivered some of the classes, right? So just briefly on that, someone was mentioning or wondering how that's changed this past year.
Yeah, we went into lockdown, or went to work from home in March. And then right when that happened, we were doing once a week, 30-minute in-person sessions. Then we kind of moved home and got this swell of employees saying, what can we do? We need something. So we immediately jumped into, I was leading mindfulness sessions virtually 5 days a week. So one, it kind of helped me.
Wow.
Two, it was helping others. And from April to in 5 months, we had over 3,000 participants join us virtually, which was way more than we had in person, just by function of physicality and space. And for that, the outcome and support was incredible, because we were also then able to open it up outside of Hudson Yards. So we had people who were joining from our Denmark office and Latin America and across the US, which was amazing. And even more amazing, with our surveys that we sent out, we saw that actually productivity levels were nearly equal to before COVID, during COVID, when we were practicing mindfulness.
Wow. So not only, an increased entrance, but even increased opportunity to spread the word across the entire company. That's really cool. Makes a lot of sense too. Another question is kind of going back towards the beginning on a couple of these last ones. I just got two more, and I maybe can weave them together here. But I think this attendee says she knew you said that your CEO initially didn't support the initial program within business hours. First of all, is that correct? And if so, how has their opinion changed over time? It seems like that's shifted. Maybe you already spoke to that, but it might have gotten kind of insulated in some other great points you made. So just to reiterate it.
Yeah. So our CEO has changed since then. So I'm going to have to go on another road show. But the idea of taking time away from your work with something that maybe people don't understand is supporting your work. It's a hard connection to make between I'm going to sit here for 30 minutes and not look at my computer. But we know that our brains actually need that and can be more productive after than if we just grind through for those 30 minutes to work on this project. So trying to articulate that and also meet them where they are. So our CEO at the time was an avid mountaineer. And I remember one time asking him, so what do you do? Like, how do you practice mindfulness? And this goes back to the language, right? And he's like, I don't practice mindfulness. And I was like, okay, hold on. Let me rephrase that question. So when you are on a mountain or doing your exercises, what do you do to focus? And he said, oh, well, I focus on my breathing. And that was a big aha for me, where I wanted to be like, that's mindfulness. But kind of kept it to myself and said, oh, that's great. That's great. So going back to listening, kind of going back and reapproaching. Since that conversation, we had kept it at the 12:30 lunchtime.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really another conversation about time outside of business hours. So for the past few years, it's been at that time.
Awesome. I know this might not be relevant, but I know at Aetna it was, and for some other companies building programs. I know this is provided as a benefit for people inside of L'Oreal. I don't know if you're considering it for outside of L'Oreal. I mean, I don't know, but someone was asking that question. So, or maybe even the podcast would go public, or you might put the meditations on, L'Oreal's site. I don't know. How would it touch people outside of the company, I guess, is the bigger question.
That's a really great question. We have the intention for the podcast to someday be public, definitely. Whether we're offering these mindfulness sessions outside of L'Oreal, I don't know if that's on the roadmap or not. Our intention is to really support our employees for now.
So, a couple of things come up for me related to that, Jade. One is that at Aetna, we also worked with our marketing team, although I wasn't in marketing, because mindfulness is actually a great story. It's a great story to get out about your company. And it's a great story for employees internally to hear. So a lot of times corporate communications and marketing are really great partners. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that there's also, we talked previously about connecting the dots within L'Oreal, right? So for instance, in my potential project, putting on my potential project hat, I'm actually working with L'Oreal in the manufacturing area, bringing mindfulness to the manufacturing folks. And I know that some other places in L'Oreal where these things have kind of popped up and you're starting to connect the dots, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I kind of love about mindfulness is a lot of people will have their own personal practice and then they're super passionate about it. So like you said, it's a very grassroots initiative where we're seeing these pockets of teams and functions who are noticing the need, or they're seeing, there's change management or things within the organization that are changing and causing, people to need some stability. And then if they have a practice, they're offering it. And next steps, I would love to bring all of these grassroots initiatives together so that we can create a big program that would support everyone in a similar way. But also I kind of love that they are servicing the individual needs of these teams that may be different. So I also love the fact that they may be, tailored to those groups. And I don't know if we would necessarily want to standardize anything.
Well, I feel like we could keep talking for a little bit longer, but we are at the hour, and I know folks are probably wanting to stay with us, but needing to go. So thank you so much, Jade, for being our guest today, and Andy for facilitating this great conversation. I feel like we hit a lot of really important points for people just getting started and people that maybe are already into this. So a lot of value for anybody that, is wanting to catch up, might have joined late, might want to share the recording. We will send that link to you afterwards. It's going to be hosted on IOM's website. And we will give you some links to connect with Andy on LinkedIn, and Jade also. She also has a new website that she's just launched. So we'll link you up with that too. But all said, if you guys need anything from us about, L'Oreal, Jade, mindfulness, whatever, feel free to reach out. We'd love to help you. And next month we'll be talking to Wendy Kwan from the Calm Monkey. So we hope you'll join us for that. But until then, make sure to not forget to breathe.
Yes,
and,
that's the hardest part. Remember.
That's right. You just
Yes.
got to keep remembering. So
Yeah.
we wish you well. Thank you, Andy and Jade. And we will see you all next time.
Thank you, Jade. Great talking to you. Thank you, Cole.
You're
Be
welcome.
well, everybody. Take care.
See you
Take
soon.
care.